Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone. As Lauren mentioned, I've been in the industry for 15 years now. I'm really passionate about women in engineering. I've recently created a series on YouTube called Chronicles of a Female Engineer. And this is really to explain all those things that people don't understand about engineers, to bust those myths. Engineering is dirty, engineering is boring, engineering is for boys, engineers just fix cars. So all those sort of myths are being debunked as women make great engineers. And in fact, our softer skills are really important for the industry as well. So despite my colorful career and the glorious nature that it sounds, today I want to tell you about a personal story. And in fact, it's the story that I almost lost everything with regards to engineering. And so I want to take you back to that day. It was the 11th of the 11th, 2011. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. It was my boyfriend's birthday. And I planned a weekend retreat. Think about horse riding, go-karting, a cabin in the woods. It was a romantic weekend that I planned. And I'd hired a rental car and we were driving. The music was pumping, the vibes were good. And we made a pit stop because my boyfriend at the time said that he had to collect a package on behalf of his friend. It was inconvenient, but we stopped by the shopping center. When we got there, he realized he hadn't bought his ID. So he asked if I could collect it on his behalf. I went on in and provided the paperwork and asked for the parcel. The ladies at the post office said, oh, look, we've got quite a lot of packages in here. Why don't you go grab a coffee and we'll look for it. They tried to look for it for a short while. So I went, okay, no worries. Went away, got a coffee, came back in. Eventually, I picked up this package. Now I was holding this big package and went outside back towards the car to where my boyfriend was waiting. But two strange things happened. Not only did my boyfriend not walk towards me and collect the package, instead I was greeted by two undercover police officers. Now, the package that I was holding was not only being tracked, but it contained illegal substances, drugs. I was shocked. I stayed calm because I didn't think, it was all happening so fast. I didn't understand. I just went with them to the interview room, went back to the police station and thought that I'll just explain what had happened. Must have been some big mistake. I didn't plead the fifth. I didn't request the services of a lawyer because I didn't need one, right? Wrong. After 3 or so hours of interviews, they told me that they were unable to proceed and that I'd have to front a judge the next morning. I couldn't believe what was happening. I spent the night in the detention center, but my mind kept going through the circumstances of the day. I thought, okay, just one more night. Let's get through this. Let's go to the judge tomorrow and clear this all up. The next morning was interesting as well. I had a remote hearing with the judge. I didn't really know how these things happened. There was a small little screen, a small TV up in the corner where you'd look when it was your turn to be called. And I had a 2-minute phone call with the legal aid officer, the legal aid lawyer. She said, look, I've got your paperwork here. I'll be talking to the judge and we'll get your bail. I said, okay, great. She didn't really ask much more. And I didn't really know how these things worked. My name got called. I don't remember too much of what was said, except bail denied. I was shocked. Did you say bail denied? There was no one to even look to, no one to talk to. I had to the lady said, okay, Ms. Mataka, move away. and it was the next person's turn. And I was left with those words weighing down on me and the proceedings that would follow. I was put into a police van and taken to the maximum security prison in Sydney. I was scared. I was afraid. I was embarrassed. I felt like a failure. Not only had I failed my parents, who had brought me to Australia to study for 4 years as an engineer. Not only had I failed my family, who I would now have to explain that I was embroiled in a legal battle. I had failed my workplace. What was going to happen with all that? Would they take me back? How could I explain all that? And most of all, I had failed myself. And I want to talk to you today about the lessons that I learned from this journey. And I would like to see, a few of you've got your cameras on, but how many of you have ever been in prison? Have not been in prison, sorry. How many of you have not been in prison? Great, thank you. So my story may not resonate with you, but I want to then talk to those of you who have had unexpected circumstances that have happened in your life. Perhaps you are a mother yourself and you've got your children that you spent years investing in, and they found themselves in jail, in a hospital. Perhaps you've been a mother expecting a child, waiting, and finally you get pregnant, and then you're given a diagnosis that changes everything. So I'll take you through some steps that I had to take. And the first one was to bravely ask for help. I have been always the helper in my life. People come to me with problems, stories, tales, issues, and I'm happy to solve them. But it takes courage, and it takes vulnerability, and it did take vulnerability, particularly as I had to make that first phone call to my brother. And I couldn't hide, because the first words he heard were, "You are receiving a collect call from Silverwater Prison. Do you accept?" So he must have been shocked. And I proceeded to tell him that, look, I've been charged. I am in a jail awaiting bail. We need to find a lawyer. We need to clear my name. Help. We need to get money. I had to ask for help, to talk to friends, families, colleagues, asking them for character references to demonstrate how out of character this was. I had to ask for help and call work and tell them what had happened. And they said 3 words that changed everything. They said, "You're still welcome." And that really made a difference. It really helped me to know that there was something to look forward to, that there was something waiting for me on the outside. And I'd go to chapel on the weekends. And Jeremiah 29:11, for those of you who are Bible readers, that verse says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future." And I believed it. The second step is to break through your barriers. Now, I was facing physical barriers at the time. I was in physical confinement. But many of you may be facing mental barriers that are keeping you stuck, keeping you in a cycle of self-sabotage. And we have to break through. And I found that I had to be positive. I had to look at the glass half full versus the glass half empty. I had to look at my mindset and be aware of when feelings were coming in that were not helping. This didn't happen overnight, trust me. And I still have to do it every day. It's possible for us. We've got a choice of how we look at life. We've got a choice, the stories we tell ourselves. And I was able to tell myself stories that helped me to get out of there. The third step is to bolster your strengths. I had a job in prison. I was there for 6 weeks. I haven't mentioned that yet. So for a time, there was no TV. For a time, there was no birthday to be had, no Christmas presents, no New Year's celebration. And I found myself in a job. I like to call it working for Qantas because I had to fix their headsets. Now, if you've ever gone on a Qantas plane or any airline, it just happened that these were Qantas headsets I had to sort out. There was a big garbage bag full of headsets. I would empty them out, untangle the cords, take off the used earmuffs. Luckily, none of them looked gross. And replace the muffs on them, put the cord around it and slip in a little UNICEF pamphlet for underprivileged children. Seal the bag, and 10 of those were 10 cents, 10 or 20 cents, don't recall, but it wasn't much. But it kept me resourceful. I felt like I was making a contribution. I felt like I was making a difference. And I was still waiting and waiting for the day that I would get out of there. So what can you be grateful for in your life? What are the strengths and things in your life that light you up? What are the things that you can lean on in those tough times? The other things that kept me going were the fact that I was in an Australian prison. I think my bio said that I'm from Zimbabwe. If I wasn't in a Zimbabwean prison, things would have been very different. Perhaps stale food, squalor conditions, a thin blanket. So I had facilities that I was able to be grateful for, that I had access to. The last step is to build your brand. How many of you know that your past does not determine your future? It doesn't. You have the ability to rewrite your narrative. You have the ability to change your story. Your future is still ahead. And now I know that life doesn't happen to us. It happens for us. That we can learn something, that we can empower others, and that we can help them grow too. So perhaps your job sucks. Perhaps your marriage has seen better days. What can you do to change your story? Again, as we mentioned before, engineering is a big part of my journey, and I give back to the community now for engineering, and that's the reason why. Because I was still welcome. They gave me an opportunity when I felt like there was hardly any left. And I'm happy to fly the banner now. So I hope my story has empowered you, has encouraged you. If you want me to speak at any of your events, I'm welcome and available. If you want to connect with me, I'm happy to talk to you and discuss any of these things that I've spoken about today. Thank you.